But so really exciting session today. As you can see, we have a special guest, Danny Lasauskas, and Danny comes from Newport Beach, California. He is a licensed real estate agent and, of course, a director of operations for the Annie Clougarty team. Did I say that correct? Okay.
Correct.
So this is an exciting session for us because not only is he a director of operations, but also an active agent, and which really gives, I think, the most well-rounded view that a person in this position can have. And of course, not everybody here can be a licensed real estate agent and director of operations, but it's great to have someone here to talk to us who is doing both and at Compass while managing a very high producing team. So we welcome Danny. Danny, you can say a few things more about yourself. I just wanted to get it started. And then we will go into, the topics you have for us today.
Yes, and actually, it's really funny. I'm having some technical difficulties, Deborah. Is there a way that you can present my slides?
Yeah. Did you want to send me your final version? And we
yeah.
for you.
That's just, Zoom is playing hardball with allowing me to share my screen. So
are you normally someone who does Google Meet? Because maybe you have to set this. Yeah,
we live in Google Meet.
I know. And when I have to share in Google Meet, I can't share. So, totally
right. And I could leave this call and then rejoin it after I, mess with the settings, but I'd rather maybe just pivot here. But so I just emailed you the link.
Perfect.
So just while we get that up and running, a brief bit about myself. I joined Compass in 2018. I joined as an IT in Beverly Hills. I moved briefly into an agent experience role and before moving back into IT. And I've been with our team, Annie, since February. So I have a background in, client success, information technology, project management. I was in the music industry and very eclectic background. So, but I'm also very passionate about productivity. Part of that is, optimizing your time. Does this help me make more money? Does this help me save more time for whatever it is I want to do? And just really optimizing how you spend your attention, your focus, and your time that gives you the best experience as a small business owner, but at the same time, each and every one of your clients, a standardized experience that is as the pinnacle of what they can receive. So that is what we'll be discussing today in more detail, is more how you manage your time and how you prioritize and do these various things, because as you will see and you can empathize, it's a very chaotic business at times, and you have to be reactive, and you can't always do the things that you want to do to further along your personal agenda. So how do you balance your personal productivity with that of the client experience, all in the context of closing a transaction and changing someone's life, either selling their home or purchasing their new home. So that's what we'll be getting into today, very briefly, and I'll be sort of discussing strategies on how you can develop those things for yourself.
Okay, we're just about to pull it up.
All right, so I have it up here. I can go through. Let's see, now I'm like the opposite. I'm not a Google Slides person.
But you just hit, yeah, perfect.
You see, you guys can see that good?
Yep, I see it.
So Danny, just let me know. You prompt me when you want to move on.
Yeah, you could go one more there. Yeah, we'll go. So as I just outlined, we're going to be talking about more so like structure on how to build a foundation that allows you to be malleable and flexible. So, a lot of times you scoff at, I used to and still do scoff at routines, but routines often, provide you a foundation for you to then be flexible and also know that, like, I'm not forgetting something, everything is taken care of. but more so, it allows you to build in and incrementally make progress on every bucket or area that you're trying to make progress in. So that's kind of what we're going to be discussing again, is building those systems, but more so building habits into your everyday that you can progress along. So next slide. And in building habits, we'll discuss this approach. And this is something that I've sort of developed in my experience working with agents at Compass for now over 4 years. And what I've brought to our team here in Orange County, California. So we'll be discussing each of these in further detail as we look at these strategies today, but they consist of observe, identify, design, and track. So you can substitute any of the lexicon here that you wish, but the overarching theme of each would stand as a way for you to analyze what you do on a daily basis, iterate that to fit your needs, and then measure it so that you can repeat that process at a certain interval that you wish to do that, or that you think is the best interval for you, your team, your business. So that's what we'll be getting into. And then the next slide will speak to what this really culminates into. So what we're talking about is productivity. And to me, productivity falls into, there's 3 generalized buckets that falls into: time management, knowledge management, and task management. The first, you really start with time management, because if you can't manage your time, you can't manage anything else. So that's why we're going to start with time management, but the other 2 are just as important. But we start with the foundation of how do I control my time as much as I can. That lends itself to those other buckets of managing your knowledge and your tasks. So productivity culminates into those, it's built in those 3 things. And we start with time management. So next slide.
Okay. The arrows don't want to work. There we go.
And yeah, so again, starting with time management, and you actually move to the next one as well. And in working with agents at Compass, outside of the brokerage, in everyday life, the questions that I field the most are, how do you find the time? How do you find the time to do what you're doing? How do you, with everything going on and all the things you're juggling, how do you find the time? Well, to answer that immediately, Peter Drucker, who, if you're not familiar, is often quoted as like the father of management thinking. He's a famed author. He's quoted with saying the toughest work is defining what the work is. And I think that if you first start with analyzing what it is that you're looking to do and really defining that with specificity, that will help you in this sort of paralysis analysis that sometimes agents find themselves in. And as an admin, you're trying to figure out what it is that you can immediately do that has going to have the most impact. Well, it starts with identifying what the work is so that you can then control, all right, how do I focus on the most important things? So defining what the work is helps you find the time. And then those structures of, building in this foundation of how am I going to build these habits, which then lends itself to what the structure is, and then how you focus your attention. So do you have that structure in place today that helps you be proactive in allocating your time and attention, while also being receptive to these reactive things that happen to you? A client calls you with an emergency. Someone says, I need to go see this property right now. There's an issue with a loan. How do you have the foundation in place to then be able to put things down, knowing that it's organized, and then be reactive to the needs of the business? So that's, a very common question. The next one, can you successfully time block? Time blocking is, everyone has their own various definition of it. I would argue that you cannot successfully and consistently time block in the real estate business. It's really hard for you to say every Tuesday from 10 to 12, I'm going to just knock out all of the contacts and update everything in my CRM. inevitably you're going to get a call, an email, something is going to take your attention away from that and become a higher priority than organizing your CRM. So can you successfully do that? That's not to say you can't. There's not the odd Saturday morning, Tuesday afternoon that you find yourself, free 3 hours because you're just in that state of a transaction, or it's maybe that time of the year where everything's a bit slower. Sure, that will happen, but can you consistently find that? I would argue no. So what is the sort of strategy to overcome that? Is building a habit, doing something consistently, small amounts of time, incrementally over time. That's how I would strategize and how I build my incremental progress for our team and make progress on different projects that we're up to. And then how do you
Can I interject with one question that I think some people might have, only being ops managers? So like, I'm an agent myself, and I think like also a leader. So I think maybe a question that some people have, and I would love to hear your answer on, do you have a way that's kind of like a standard amongst the whole entire team of how you identify what's most important and what's not? Because I can imagine that some people might feel that one thing is much more important, but then on the opposite side of things, you're like, come on, obviously this is more important. So how do you kind of juggle that amongst the entire team?
Yes, I'll touch on that as well, but to be a succinct answer, there's an agent out here in California. His name is Tim Smith. He's a very well-known agent, does a lot of business. He has this saying of like, is there blood in the water sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So is there something right now that I need to do that's going to immediately make me some money? Like, is there a transaction? Oh, like, do I have an active transaction? And is there an action I need to take right now to further that transaction along? That becomes the priority. So it's for us and our team, our priority and the way we block time or attention focus is based on a sort of short-term to long-term money effect, if you want to call it that, where it's sort of like vernacularize that is there something right now I need to do that's going to progress this transaction along, or is this something I need to do to like reinforce that this client wants to work with me so that I'm not losing the chance to work with them? Anything else that's more of a long-term endeavor kind of gets deprioritized in that sense. So that's the sort of uniformity that we've carved out, that I would argue a lot of agents sort of inherently do without realizing it a lot of the times. But by vocalizing it and writing it down and putting it on paper and saying, okay, here's how I'm going to, allocate my resources of attention and time, you can then very quickly, hey, all right, so there's nothing on my agenda right now today for me to, I sent out all the things for signature. I'm waiting on that to come back. We've organized this inspection. We have all this on the calendar, and you kind of can go down the line very visually, but also more importantly, methodically, to then understand I'm getting everything done that I need to get done. And that helps you plan the day, the week, the month. But, the saying would be, is there blood in the water? That's, I think the thing that would be often top of mind there is how you force prioritize the action items that are put in front of you.
And I can imagine making sure that everyone's blood looks the same on the team, because to some people, I'm sure they would categorize that as blood in the water, and others would say, oh, it's not really a huge deal. So I guess coming up with, for the ops people on here, I think making sure that everybody's always aligned on what exactly is that, because I also think that as an ops manager, you also probably have to manage emotions and heightened emotions when those times do come, to still make sure that the team is focused on the overarching goal of what you're still trying to work towards.
Correct. And that's going to be part of what we discussed too, is, the foundation of managing your time is designing what's important. Because, if you're, having an aspiration without any sort of project attached to it becomes a dream. If you attach an aspiration to a project and actions, now that's a goal. If you have a project without a goal, that's simply a hobby or something you like to do. Totally. I'm totally borrowing this from Tiago Forte, by the way, but if you have a project or action items without a sort of a destination of where you see those things going. That is just simply something that you enjoy doing, or it becomes a hobby. But now, once you attach direction to that, now that can be measured, that can be then tracked, that can be iterated to, understand, is this getting us closer to where it is? So as a team, you want to understand what your goals are holistically as a team, and then segmented by individual team members, so that as an operations person, I could say, hey, your goal was X, Y, and Z. What are you doing to get there? And then I can help measure and evaluate if the way you're spending your time is effective. Is that going to actually get you there? If it's not, then we'll talk about is strategies on how to filter out that. So if we go on to the next slide, we'll start with observe. So I think observing is, it's not to get sort of like spiritual or anything, but it's like you need to get out of your own head in that sense. But you need to understand how you're spending your time. It's an odd thing to sort of describe, but when you first are starting to like evaluate if you and your team are effective in what you're doing, and those are often like micro actions. It's, first thing in the morning, what do I do when I sit down at my computer and I'm sipping on coffee? Is there something I can be doing better? Like, how am I actually spending my time? And observe what you do day in and day out. And then just making those minor tweaks can have those long-term incremental changes. So I think it's David Allen. If anyone's not familiar, he is the author of Getting Things Done, which is a very popular productivity book that a lot of people sort of find allegiance with. But he's quoted with, if you do not pay attention to what has your attention, you will give it more attention than it deserves. So being deliberate and purposeful with what you're focusing on is very important, especially I would argue in the business of real estate, where things are very chaotic at times and you have to be reactive. So if you're not deliberate with what you're focusing on, you can get lost and drown out in all of the things that are thrown at you throughout the day. So that is as an agent or as an operations, as in operations throughout the day, I have 6, 7 people just on my team that can throw me situations and scenarios, not withstanding the vendors and the escrow officers and the inspectors who else are then sort of fanned out in there. There's a multitude of people that could completely lopside how I focus my attention throughout the day. So observing what you're doing, set out and like deliberately observe what you do. And that's mornings, afternoons, evenings, that's weekdays, weekends. Like, how are you spending that time? What are you doing? How are you planning your day? Do you plan your day? What do you sit down at the beginning of the day and like plan out? Do you do it on a calendar? Are you simply pen and papering it? Do you spend time to educate yourself every day? Are you listening to a podcast when you exercise in the morning? Is it a real estate podcast? What does that routine look like? How are you doing that? Are you reading the newspaper? Like, be very sort of granular and almost forensic with what you are observing in your own behaviors, because it's important to just understand what that is. Without understanding what you're currently doing, you can't then sort of optimize that and make that better. So that's finding inefficiencies. So where are the inefficiencies of what I'm doing? I sit down at my computer and I'm going through my emails. How long am I doing that for? Can that be broken down and take less time? Maybe I'm spending way too much time sifting through my inbox every morning when I could be taking that extra 5 minutes and doing something else. I could be updating a few contact cards in a CRM. I could be finding ideas for a newsletter for the team. I could be, doing something that won't take that long, but would have a more, large impact than just sitting and deleting emails or forwarding them to who it is. So how long are you in that? Are you sitting in meetings? When are those meetings? Are there patterns that you can find where you're spending a lot of time in the office? Are there patterns where you're consistently in your car? think of all of those things and try to observe why you're doing those things at the same time. Why is your focus on that area? Is it necessary for you to be doing those things at that time? Is it maybe not necessary? But the most important overarching understanding here is, first start with observation. What is the current state of affairs for you personally and your team? Is there a pattern that you can sort of define and then also attribute a value to that? Are those things necessary? Do we have to be doing those things? Is there a better method to doing them? Is there a better time to be doing them? Does these things make me money, or do they save me money? Do they, is there ways that we can optimize this? And then from there onto the next slide, you then identify those things. And again, it's important to write everything down, just as you would prioritize in that sense of writing down what are the things that we consistently can identify as the priorities every single day. Write down the same things that you have observed. Can you specify the problems that you see that you have? I spend way too much time in my inbox. Identify that and write that down so that you can then evaluate that. What are the areas of the business that we should focus on? Like, what are the things that are causing the most friction? Maybe there's a way, we're doing some marketing newsletter, we do it together, and it just becomes this huge, paralyzed discussion every week because everyone has a different opinion. Is there a better way of spending that time? Maybe we should split out and everyone does their own newsletter, and then we share it at the end of the week. Strategize on ways to, sort of not waste your time, really, is what it comes down to. What would have the most impact? What is an area that we should focus on immediately? Right now, our CRM is really, really disorganized. And every time we go to start a different project that relies on the CRM, we can't start that project because we first need to organize the CRM. So finding, again, those patterns, identifying those things that are like, okay, every time we make these observations, this thing comes up. Maybe we should identify as problem number one that we look at first. And then, of course, as we've been discussing, identifying what the goals and objectives are. So I like a quote. I'm all about quotes. I think it's just something that kind of motivates you. But I have one for: setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible to the visible, which Tony Robbins, very famous motivational speaker. But I think it's important to get things out of your head. A lot of agents that I work with across different brokerages in various deals, the entire transaction seems to be in their head. And that has to cause anxiety. I can't be in their head, of course, but that has to cause some level of anxiety to be like, am I forgetting something? Did I call that person? Or did you receive that? Get things outside of your head and in some sort of system, on a paper, on a spreadsheet, in a Google Doc, wherever it is, write it down, because that it becomes visible, which then has this sort of emphasis on your psyche. And then also working with a team, you can now very easily share something like that. If it's in your head, it's really hard for you to share ideas and goals, objectives. So identify these things and then write them down. The other thing is, goals, as I've discussed, are sort of like destinations, right? They can be these abstract sort of things. So that would look like something like, I want to become more recognized in X neighborhood. This year, I want to become more recognized as an agent in this neighborhood. That's a goal. That's a great goal to have. An objective then would be something that you can measure to achieve that goal. So I want, as an objective to the goal of, I want to be more recognized in the neighborhood, my objective is to send a weekly mailer to that neighborhood. I can measure that. Am I sending that mailer every week? Yes or no. I can say and track if I'm doing that. I can also track how that is actually attaining that goal. I want to door knock once a week in that neighborhood. I can then track that. So Goals, I would say, are define those with your team as, we want to be the most recognizable team in this market. Great goal to have. Now break that down into an objective that you either say, this is a quarterly objective, this is a monthly objective, this is a weekly objective, but make those things measurable, like projects and things that you can do to get you where you want to go. With those in place, you will find just naturally that you can filter out the fuzz a lot easier, because you're like, is this thing going to get me towards a goal? If it's not, I can very easily sort of triage this as, is this necessary or is it not? And we'll get into that in a second here, but it starts with identifying those things after you've observed them, because then you can also say, are there current projects? Are there current things that we're doing that already align with things that we're identifying? Maybe you're on the right track and you just didn't even know it, but now you can actually connect those things, and now those things become more effective. They maybe have more of an onus on them, and you are now working with more of a purpose, which makes you more deliberate in your actions. So next, after identifying, is, you've probably seen this before, an Eisenhower matrix. So you've identified what you're after. First you've observed how you spend your time. You have identified the things that you do, your inefficiencies. You identified the days, how you spend your days. How do you now design what you're going to focus on, and how are you going to design habits to then get you there without having to dedicate too much time every day and time block? The most common method, and the one that we discuss often at Compass, is the Eisenhower matrix. So based in these quadrants here, if it's urgent and really important, you're likely going to do it yourself. You're going to do it immediately. If it's not urgent but also important, you're going to schedule it later. So this could come in the form of scheduling an email reply. It's important, but I have something that's more important right now. Let me schedule this reply to go to this person at 12 p.m. That way, when I'm done, they'll be getting that email and I know they're going to reply to me right away. I now have the time to focus on them once they reply to me, because I'm done with this. Is it urgent and not important? Can that then be outsourced? Is there someone else on the team who can do this? Is there someone we can hire that can do this? Is this something that I can delegate to, I guess there really those two resources. Is there someone else that really can do this? Can I assign this to someone outside of my own responsibility? And then, of course, not urgent and not important, eliminate that. Don't remove those things that aren't impactful and aren't of value to what you do. If it's not getting you where you need to go, be okay with eliminating that. I think that oftentimes people will keep things on a to-do list to not forget it, and it just rolls into each week, each day. But really, if it's not important to them and it's never urgent, don't hold on to it. You're holding on to this brain, or this space in your brain rather, that isn't necessary, that you can be offsetting and putting to something else that actually has value towards what you're doing. So when you're designing what to do and how to spend your time, this is a method that I mean, everyone not everyone, but a lot of people in business, I've seen a lot of agents and teams at Compass leverage this. This is just a very easy way to immediately apply value and urgency to what you're doing throughout the day. On the next slide, once we have this in mind, it immediately lends itself to what can be eliminated. So I always start with what can be eliminated. I'll use your inbox as an example. When you're trying to organize your inbox, I think this is probably the thing that everyone will empathize with the most. You get how many newsletters from agents across the country that you've never signed up for? What can you eliminate? How can you clean and filter out everything that you don't need to be looking at? So always start with eliminating the unnecessary first. It's better to start with less and then try to build versus building everything and then afterwards try to eliminate what you don't need. I would argue eliminate everything that's unnecessary first, then build. So what can be eliminated? Emails is an easy one. Maybe there is a task that is never truly important that you like. Well, I'm struggling all of a sudden to think of another one. Email is really the biggest one, but what can be delegated? So these would be the sort of low level, it doesn't take a lot of intellectual faculty sort of tasks to do. Maybe errands, picking up things, can that be delivered? Rather than picking up our new brochures for our listing, can we pay that company to deliver them? I've now just saved myself probably maybe an hour round trip. Is there something like I need to print something? Can I, get someone on my team who's already at the office on those days to print those things? Being smart about how you actually really spend your time getting those things off of your plate. And then once all of those things are designed in that way, now you start to build the framework of what are the habits now I wanted to do that will help achieve each of the goals. So if identify the opportunities based on your observations, how do you begin to build what habits you want to do for each of the goals that you've now set out for? So I really appreciate the Andrew Huberman. If anyone is familiar, he's like a neuroscientist tenured out of Stanford. Talks a lot about habit forming and getting rid of habits. And he argues that you start with visualizing. The easiest way for you to start a new habit is to visualize what that habit looks like. I want to work out every single morning. Okay, what does that look like? That means I visualize I'm going to wake up at 5. I'm going to have a cup of coffee. I'm going to drink that cup of coffee. I'm going to go outside and stretch. I'm going to then go for a run. And then after that run, I'll get ready for work. But like visualizing what that looks like. When you visualize that, you can break that down into like these bite-sized, attainable little steps. You're more prone to following through on that action. So for me, a very simple one would be, every day I want to organize 10 contacts in our CRM. All right, what does that look like? I'm going to sit down on my computer, and the first thing I'm going to do while I'm sipping on coffee is I'm going to go into our CRM. I'm going to hit organize, and I'm just going to put tags on them. I'm going to put groups on them. I'm going to update their addresses. And once I'm doing that, I close it, I go into my email. Very simple. But by visualizing it, you are, again, more prone to doing it. And you're sort of what they call procedural memory. You're sort of reinforcing those procedural memory synapses in your brain. It's by doing that, you're building and reinforcing those neural pathways that you're more likely to want to do that one more time. So the other thing that you would do is sort of task bracket and provide yourself the context of why you want to have that habit. So as I'm visualizing what habit I want to build, I'm also considering, is this really necessary? Why do I keep pondering on this thought of having this habit? I really want to brush my teeth 3 times a day. Why do I want to do that? Is it really necessary for me to brush my teeth? Yeah, it's really important. Is it negotiable that I can do that? And if I can't do that and I'd still be in good health? No, I would argue that's not negotiable. So that's why I keep, having this recurring desire to want to build that habit. So provide yourself that context of, why do I keep wanting to organize my CRM? Why do I always want to do that? Well, the more organized my CRM is, the more projects I can more readily lend that CRM to. I want to send a Christmas card. I don't have to organize it. I can just immediately send that out to the printer, or I can immediately print out labels for everyone's address. I don't have to worry about that anymore. That's why I keep thinking about it. It'll alleviate anxiety. Is it negotiable? In a lot of ways, in real estate, having a dialed in CRM is non-negotiable. The more organized you are, you are more have more notes on every customer that you've talked to, past clients, current clients. You can provide actual details. You can ask them about their kids' soccer games. You could, hey, that address over there, I saw it as I drove by the other day. What did you do? You put some renovations on that house. You just having a more organized CRM will make you just a better agent and a better real estate advisor to everyone. And then the most important thing in building a habit is understanding when to do them. When is the most optimal time for you to accomplish what you want to accomplish? Again, referencing Angie Huberman, early versus later parts of the day. So 0 to 9 hours after you wake up, recent science has sort of demonstrated can be your brain is more tuned in to do what they call linear tasks. So things that don't take any sort of creative thinking. This would be like exercise, but this would be, weightlifting, where you're just like, all right, I need to lift this amount of weight, this amount of times. You don't really need to think about that, but you just need to do it. So that could be something where it's administrative tasks, cleaning up your email, unsubscribing, filtering out, archiving. This could be, sending out, calling a client. I need to call this client and make sure that they sign this paper, or remind them that they need to sign the DocuSign. It could be, anything that in your day-to-day that isn't going to take any sort of creative thinking. So the opposite side of that is the 10 to 17 hours after you wake up is that non-linear. So this would be brainstorming, analytical thinking, tasks that there's no like right or clear singular answer. Oftentimes I'll try to schedule our team meetings later in the day so that you can do all of the things you need to do first thing in the morning. And then the things that become more of these sort of analytical things, these brainstorming, these now I'm forgetting the word, masterminds. Thank you, myself. Masterminds we'll try to do later in the day because there isn't any, sort of right answer there. We're simply try to, it's more of a process of discovery. So, hey, what are we going to do? What video are we going to make? What's our next sort of marketing campaign going to look like? There's not any clear answer there. So you're dedicating that second half of the day to that, where you're a bit more calm. You're not as, you've gotten all the sort of urgent things that needed your focus and attention out of the way earlier that day. Now you can, even sit in that meeting and be more reactive. If something in the middle of that meeting happens that needs to be prioritized, you can do that because what you're doing there isn't something that is as clear of, the singular answer or the right or wrong. So when you're developing these habits for yourself, when you do them can also be very impactful. So another reason or another way of defining when to do something is on the days you have meetings, are you at the office? Maybe there's something that you can align with being at the office that day. So one of the habits, I want to build is I want to print out market data for my team. Well, if I'm at the office already, I can do that. So that all is going to be a way for you to like design what you're up to and really optimize your time. And then to close, you need to then track all of these things to make sure that you're on track with, what you're trying to do. So that could be just measuring. How are you measuring success? How do you understand if what you're doing is the right things for you and your business and the team? And then when you have all that data, you can revisit and iterate from there. So I as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this stuff. So I could talk about it for a long time. I tried to really condense a lot of this into this short amount of time to really provide emphasis on how you can, build these habits into your day. But if you have any questions, please let me know. I go down rabbit holes. My wife will tell you this is really all I talk about. And so I'm always all ears for any questions on how I build this for myself and our team. And yeah, I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate everybody who joined us and stayed. I know we did go a little overtime, but it is a very important topic because it is something that really sets your whole, mindset framework of how you're going to support the real estate business in your positions from the start, right? Like it's all fine to say, give you systems and processes to plug into, but if you don't start from the beginning, as Danny really highlighted out for us, you don't get to where you want to go. So it really does have to start from all the habit and mindset and really understanding what the goals are, setting the goals, visualizing the goals. It's funny when you talked about visualizing, as I'm just hosting Friendsgiving here for Chirag Shah Coaching at his home for a lot of our clients who are coming, I sat and visualized all the things that I needed to make sure to accomplish and get out the door to bring here a few times so that when I executed, it was all like ingrained, like kind of like muscle memory, right? Like that's why we do these visualizations, because you kind of take it on board and it becomes a little bit more of a muscle memory than like, oh my God. And you feel like, did I do this? Did I forget to do this? And be more reactive than proactive. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. It all starts from there for all of us here and our agents for that matter, not just directors of operations or any type of assistance role that you might be for your team. So Danny did not get through, I don't believe, the whole presentation today. So we will look to schedule a part 2 the next time when Danny can be available for us to finish going over this, because it is a super important topic. If anybody does have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. If not, that's okay. This is recorded. It will be hosted on our platform. So if you want to watch it back, if you feel like you need to see it again, it's a big topic. So please feel free to see it over there in the next 24 to 48 hours. It will be available. And we thank Danny again for joining us and giving of his time, as he is so passionate about this topic. And we thank you guys for joining us. And when Danny does come back for part 2, you will be notified, of course, via email and calendar invite, so you know exactly when that might be happening. Hope you guys all have a happy Thanksgiving if you're celebrating Thanksgiving, and enjoy time, friends, family, and stay healthy. Take care, everybody. Danny, thank you so much again. And we look forward to having you back for the second part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, just to reiterate really quickly before I go, yeah, the presentation is pretty concluded, just about tracking. So I could say that, you're not missing too much. There is, of course, other parts to it that we'll get into. But yeah, I started off as an admin to answer the question, Taylor. I work with 6 agents. So looking forward to seeing everyone again. Yeah, really excited. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you guys. Take care. Have a great rest of the weekend.